Really appreciate it. This is our second big event as a club. For those of you who've known us since last year, we're ML at UVA this year. We started up last year. We aim to be the premier AI ML undergraduate organization for all things research, education, and industry related here at UVA. And so the purpose of this event today is to talk a little bit more about undergraduate research at UVA, talk more about what research is as a whole, and most importantly, how you all can get involved with these opportunities, amazing opportunities here at UVA. And so today we invited some amazing faculty members and also some graduate students, and I'm going to allow each of them a chance to quickly and briefly just introduce themselves.
Okay. Hi everyone. So I'm Brad Campbell. I'm an associate professor in computer science as well as electrical and computer engineering. My office is actually here in the Link Lab, so I'm kind of hidden back in the corner. I think maybe we'll talk more about kind of the research that we do as we go, but nice to see you all.
Hello. This is so cool, so fancy. I'm Jessica Besnier. I'm a fourth year PhD student here. I'm actually in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, and I do a lot of machine learning with hydrological extremes, so predicting droughts and floods.
Hello everybody, thank you for being here. My name is Suprio. I'm a rising fourth year PhD student in electrical and computer engineering. My advisor is Ben Calhoun, and we do chip designing.
My name is Kelley Tobler. I'm a staff member here. I'm a program manager. I do a lot of professional development seminars and other initiatives here in the Link Lab, and I'll be serving as a facilitator tonight.
And I also want to take a brief one to introduce us as well. So my name is Vainateya. I'm a current computer science and math major. I'm a third year here at UVA. Me and Alex are currently doing research in model interpretability, so that's where our passions lie.
My name is Alex. I'm also a third year here, as well as a mathematics major. And as Vinny said, both me and Vinny do research. We both do interpretability research, and so that's where those are our passions.
Hey everyone, my name is Raffu. I'm also a third year math and CS, and I do robotics research under Professor Chandra. Thanks for coming out.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start. So we are here to talk about research. So we're going to start broad, and we are going to ask our panelists to either maybe share their personal experience on research or what research is from your perspective. So maybe we'll just go in order, and you can pick one of those and share your insights.
All right, so first thing about research is to have a good memory, because I just forgot the sequence of questions.
Your personal experience or what research means to you.
My personal experience. So I started doing my PhD after having worked in the industry for several years, and the personal experience has been seeing the focus on communicating the work, because in industry also there's, we do interesting stuff, but when we are doing research in academic setting, communication is very important. So that is a learning. And the other aspect about doing research is, I think there are two aspects of research. One is at personal level, like I don't know something, and how do I find the answer for that? So that could be a research, right? But then the other part is that how useful is that research? Is that useful for the broader audience, for the world? Then that's where it becomes more interesting. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree with the communication part of research. I often think of research very separate than the communicating ideas part. But as a grad student, I have quickly learned that that is not the case, and we need to be able to like communicate our research effectively. And so I'll also kind of talk about my research journey. So I went to undergrad at James Madison University down the road and was able to get plugged into undergrad research there, and we did biomimicry design research and looking at how engineering students learned. And that research, like the professor was like holding our hands during it, telling us exactly what we needed to do. And then we got to go to some conferences and write some papers, but was very much a guided research activity. And so I knew like what I was looking for versus coming right after undergrad to my PhD with most people in my research group already having their masters. My advisor's like, okay, what do you want to study? And I'm like, are you not gonna tell me what I'm supposed to figure out or what the problems are? And so for me, coming right after undergrad, I was like thrown into this world of trying to find out stuff that needed to be figured out. And my first projects, I had no idea what I was doing. And now, I'd say like in my third year of my PhD, I'm like, okay, I'm understanding about research and how to read research papers and find the gaps in them and figure out like what needs to be done. And so for me, a big part of research is I just like write down all the questions I have, and sometimes they formulate into research projects, which has been really cool to be like, is this even possible? And then being able to like go down a rabbit hole of this super specific idea, and at the end of the day, you're like, oh, it is possible, or it isn't possible, and you have all these new tools that you've learned along the way.
You know, I was thinking about these questions, and I guess I realized that I actually started doing research as an undergrad as well. So maybe there is something to that. And at the time, I was just trying to work on something interesting. And I was actually working with a professor. It's one of these professors where, like, I could understand the words he was saying, but I didn't know what he was talking about. I was just trying to, I kind of was like, I think there's something interesting here. I'd like to explore more. And so I did. And over time, I sort of figured out how to kind of convert that into maybe a more formal research project of some sort. But then it kind of, I guess, snowballed from there. Because next thing I know, I was going to grad school, and I was like, that's it. I'm just going to keep doing these cool, interesting projects, and then I'll go get a job. And well, now here I'm still at a university, still doing research after all these years. So, anyways, I think it's a lot about doing research, trying to answer new questions and figure out things that we don't know today. And there's something a little bit daunting about that, right? But as you start out, you're not looking to solve the hardest problems that nobody's solved for decades. There's so many facets to it. It's really about trying to just kind of get started and explore some new area in some way. And oftentimes it kind of grows from there, and you never know.
Yeah, so I really love this question because I think it's something that I've really learned, through time and with my experience with research so far. And I think what I've learned is, research is, research can be many things, right? But ultimately, research, it requires things like curiosity, as well as things like passion. And what I mean is, research is a constant hunger for more knowledge, and that's not just knowledge that, like, it's not just knowledge that you learn in class, but that's very important. But it's also knowledge that you want to seek out yourself, and knowledge that no one knows yet, right? And part of this, will ultimately, will usually will entail things like going down rabbit holes, right? And not just, saying like, oh, like what new things can I discover, but also knowing why you want to discover those new things, which is like, that's really part of the passion that's necessary.
I think that Alex really hit it on the nail there. I honestly think that for me, research is starting from those principles, right? Starting from something that you want to know of this world, something that you want to uncover, and then, like Jessica said, going down those rabbit holes, or like Professor Campbell said, like asking those questions, and really, trying to break down fundamentally, starting from the why of research, and then moving to the how, and then finally the what. And I feel like that process of looking at research and that philosophy has, has been the only thing that I felt has given me a lot of success in research. And I feel like that was the only way that I was able to learn and able to contribute towards knowledge in this space.
So I might sort of be the odd one out so far in the sense that I haven't come up with my own research topic yet, right? So I'm very much in the stage where I'm still kind of shadowing my professors and what they're doing. So for me right now, it's very much being observant, right? Like, is the paper I'm reading, like, are there any weaknesses that I think I can achieve, or that one of my coworkers or my mentor can achieve, right? And it's just making these observations and trying to tie it back to some of my background knowledge. So in terms of where I am right now, doing research is like very much in tune with observation.
Okay, I'm gonna start with Professor Campbell on this one. Since you did undergraduate research, graduate research, you're now a faculty member, what would you say from all of those experiences are some of the most important qualities of a good researcher?
That's always a good question. So I'm not claiming this is an exhaustive list, but I'll give you two. So one, I think, is perseverance. The kind of side effect of trying to discover something new or explore an area that really hasn't been looked at is there's not a nice roadmap. There's not somebody who's laid out, okay, here's step one, do this, here's step two, do this. It's okay, here's what we think are the first steps. And then we're gonna try to figure out what the next step is once we kind of know a little bit more. That can often lead to obstacles that you have to just sort of like keep trying things or run the experiment again or collect more data or try a few different options and see how they work. Frankly, that takes a certain level of commitment and perseverance. So I think that's a big one. And then the second one, and this one's a little maybe it's probably true generally, but maybe is even more true for undergrad research, is time management. So again, in this theme of kind of discovery and there not being a clear set of steps, there's also not usually like very clear deadlines or milestones. But you're still students, right? You're still taking other classes. And what do those classes have? Very clear milestones, very clear deadlines, right? Homework is due this day, exam is on this day. And so what often will happen is you'll find yourself like, well, I could work on this research project maybe I'm interested in, but there's not necessarily a deadline. Or I could complete this homework that's due in 2 days. Now, there's very good reasons to do the homework, of course, but you're gonna have to manage the time and find time to work on projects that don't necessarily have as many immediate deadlines. And so I think that's also something that if you're gonna be successful as an undergrad researcher, you have to either be good at that or set up practices or work with other people to sort of effectively manage time so that you do invest enough time to make progress in research.
And I'm going to follow this up with Suprio, who had industry experience. Would you say that there's any other good qualities from your perspective from industry, research and industry?
I could say one aspect is asking questions. So, for example, in I think any kind of product design or any system that we design, there are specs, and they come down from the top, right? And then, say, as a new engineer, we work on those. So it is important to understand where those specs are coming from. The better we understand and better we question them, it is possible that it is basically, I would say a good quality of it. It is a quality for a researcher because we are asking the questions and trying to understand the bigger picture, and then it can help us identify the right problems to solve or find out the weaknesses. So that is probably the big one.
Okay, I'm going to open this up a little broader. There are research soft skills and there are research hard skills or technical skills. So what would you say, if you want to take soft or the hard skills, and I'll open up to whoever would like to start this one off. What is needed in regards to research soft skills and what's needed in research hard skills?
Okay, I guess I'll start this off by talking about the soft skills. If there's one thing that I learned from research, like both last year and this year, it's that time management is like sacrosanct, it's paramount, right? And I think this goes back to something that Professor Campbell was talking about. A lot of what we're doing in research is, it's long term, right? It's a lot of hours put over the course of many months that ultimately may actually end up being nowhere, depending on what you're working on, right? So not only do you have to be really perseverant about this, but you have to be able to balance your time and sustainably put through a lot of that effort over the long term and work for the sake of learning and work for the sake of working and enjoy the process, because that's all what it is.
For me, the big one would be communication and transparency. So I guess communication. Like coming to research as a third year, I very much was like, okay, there are a ton of people who are trying to get into my lab. Now my professor is spending a lot of time, right? So I can't come to him with dumb questions or, hey, I need help saying this, get help me go. Dependencies are not working, right? So I got to figure out most things on my own without telling him. And that was a really, really bad assumption to make. Right? You want to be telling your mentor, everyone else you're working with, exactly what you're working on, almost at a day-to-day level, or if not, like every few days, right? Because not only can it help you, but it's also very rewarding for you, for me at least, in the sense that, I did end up spending like 6 hours a day in that repo working, right? And, sometimes it feels that that time and effort just goes into a vacuum, but it doesn't, right? Your mentor, your people you're working with, they remember these things. And oftentimes they give you guidance. So the big two things for me would be communication, transparency, so they know what you're working on, so you can actually get guidance.
Off of that, I will also say sometimes your mentor or supervisor may be in a place where they don't know all the technical skills, but they do know who knows them. And so coming from JMU, I would say I had a lot of the soft skills, the presentation skills, the communication skills, time management, and things like that. I had not coded a day in my life. I knew nothing about Python. I had never heard of machine learning, or I had heard of AI, but I could not tell you anything about it. And so coming into grad school and then just being thrown into this and being expected to know all of this, I was like, okay, there's only so many YouTube videos out there I can watch, and there's only so many library courses I can go to. But it wasn't until my advisor's like, oh, this person knows this and this person knows this, and then each of those people knew other people who knew stuff. And so it really got me out of my comfort zone, being like, hello, I don't know anything. This is what my code looks like right now. Can you help me? But just asking the questions, and there is no such thing as a dumb question to certain people. You're saying, don't waste, if you're talking to the head honcho at some company, don't be like, oh, what's the bug in this line of code mean? But maybe go to your friend and be like, hey, can you help me out with this? And so for me, it's figuring out who to ask the questions to, and also just really utilizing my resources. And I would not be where I am without my research group and without my friends in the Link Lab and friends in classes too, just being able to help me, and especially bear with me the first year or so of grad school, trying to learn everything about coding.
So most of what we just heard was soft skills, but is there anything that you guys can recommend from a hard skill or technical that might resonate as these undergraduate students are looking for research opportunities here? What do they need? What are the skills required for research from that perspective?
Yeah, so I think, this one's certainly specific to machine learning, but I think that machine learning, it's typically, it's classified as a subset of CS. Right? But to be honest, I think one thing that I've learned is that machine learning is, it's certainly it's usually part of the CS department, because the way that we implement machine learning is by CS. But really, machine learning by itself, it's really more a subset of, more near math. Right? It's math, stats, and prog, right? Because that's really where the fundamentals come from. And so I think, so if you really, or for those who are really interested, in seeing machine learning, for example, machine learning research as a future career. Taking math classes, right? You don't have to get a math major, but taking math classes linear algebra, stats, prob, and those kind of classes. That's going to be very vital because those are going to give you the skills you need to not only look at machine learning from the high level, but really get down there, which is what you do for research.
I think I want to add one thing. So this is a room full of UVA students, probably mostly engineering students. You've got technical skills, right? Come on. I mean, you came to an event at 6 p.m. Where you're thinking I'm already taking classes. How can I do more work? And so I think that's why we don't often talk about it is different research projects are going to require different technical skills. You have a good foundation already, and so a lot of it is being able to build on that and learn the part that's new to you, because there's going to be something that's new. So the resource, finding the resources, developing that. But I don't think that I would be so worried about trying to make sure that you've checked all the boxes and you have all the technical skills first, because then you're going to graduate, right? And so part of it is going to be a little bit of learning on the job.
I just wanted to add on to that. As part of what ML at UVA does, we really want to network with a ton of professors to see if they'd be interested in working with some of our students on research projects. So one question we always ask them is, are you looking for any members, with any technical skill? We tried asking them that, with some professors that, in the first week of classes, they said, forget about all that. Just give me a student who's really dedicated and can come to meetings every week and is actually passionate about research that I'm interested in, right? And I feel like that wasn't the first time we heard that. We heard that as a theme throughout, multiple professors as we talk to more people who, work with students, especially undergraduate students, undergraduate researchers, is what most, what undergraduate research is it's really based on more of the soft skills than the hard skills, right? But really professors are looking for people who can actually put in the time, the dedication, and show genuine interest towards, the purity of research in that aspect.
I have one last thing to add. You guys can always learn more technical skills, and you guys are, like Professor Campbell was saying, you guys are super smart. And one thing I will say, when looking for jobs, apply to the jobs that you're not qualified for, because usually they are looking for someone who can learn. I somehow got an offer from a software development company, not having coded a day in my life. And that was all from me showing them in places that I got put in positions where I had no skills, but I was able to learn the skills, and I was able to communicate how I effectively learned those skills. And so just being open to learning and being open to being wrong and looking dumb, honestly. So yeah, you guys are doing great. Keep it up.
So since my background is in chip designing, I love chip designing, and I'm guessing all of you are interested in ML, so I can't help but say ML is actually, realized because of the semiconductors, right? So from that perspective, I would love, or let me ask a question. How many of you have taken any digital design or circuit design courses? Great, good, few hands. So yeah, so from, if you want to do ML, chip designing is a good, domain where you can do that. And from skills perspective, if you can focus on the fundamentals of, device, some level of device physics courses, some circuit designing courses, they are really useful skills that can, help you get into kind of circuit design, chip design, research work. And yeah, go for it.
So, we left our audio here. So we have heard from everyone on kind of the spirit of research, broad, high level. We've talked about some skills. Want to open it up to all of you to see if you have any questions for our panelists. We have two other categories we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about careers, and we're going to talk about how to communicate to faculty to actually get the job. So from a skill perspective or just overall, what questions do you all have for our panelists?
So when you first get thrown into undergraduate research, when you first get thrown into undergraduate research or any kind of research at all, is it like you're joining in the middle of a project and you just kind of have to learn everything that's gone up to at that point, and then you're just kind of inserted into the lab, or is it always you're starting a new project with a whole team?
I think it can vary depending on who you're working with. I was thrown into like the middle of a project in my undergrad research, but I've also, when we've had like undergraduate researchers in our group, they can start their own project or like support a grad student researcher, so. just open, I think.
Yeah, I think all of the above. It just depends. And yeah, there's a lot of variables that go into that, I guess. Can't turn off that. You can do blank on the projector. So it's also, I think, something you can talk to the PI or the mentor about too. It may not be an option or for whatever reason, but if something would be more fitting or is more what you're looking for, it doesn't hurt to ask.
Yeah, so just to add on really quickly, I've experienced both. So my current project was a new, like I was kind of the first person working on it. My previous one, I was kind of joining in on the middle of like another undergraduate project. So in my experience, I would much prefer the latter, just because that it's so much easier to write your own code and like get started there, as opposed to like picking up someone else's work and joining them in. Now, again, if you prefer one or the other, this would be something that you, like a conversation you want to have with whoever you join.
So earlier on, you guys mentioned about specifically like, say you're in some type of research project and you spend a lot of time, but like it gets to nowhere per se. Like you got, maybe you meet an obstacle, you meet a block road, and like when you get there, does that mean like, I guess in your experience, like do you just stop or move on to something new, or you keep trying forever and ever, even though it gets you nowhere? Like how would you go about that? I wouldn't say obstacle, but like pretty much like an endpoint. You're like, I'm done. Like I don't know what to go wrong.
This is gonna sound like really cliche, but I feel like in research, it's like you're trying to find like your path towards some type of contribution in the field, right? Now, just because you hit like a dead end in like the current path that you're currently on, doesn't mean that there's not a redirection there towards where you can focus on something new, or where you can focus on something that, you know, the world at large could more use, right? So while your current problem statement, and the way that you thought about the problem might change, the main idea that you want to contribute to the problem at large will never change unless you want it to, right? Which is why, like, I kind of wanted to emphasize the fact that starting from first principles and researching like for the sake of, you know, actually wanting to contribute to the field, and then actually wanting to solve a problem, you know, that interests you, right? Actually wanting to, you know, make a difference in that aspect will always lead you to the right place over the long term. Even though in the short term, you might get, you know, tossed around a little bit and might get, you know, thrown down like, you know, the, you know, path that most people wouldn't have gone down. In my opinion, I feel like there's no such thing as like, you know, a failure in research, because at worst, you discovered a path that another person can now not take.
So kind of this idea, and going a lot above what Denise said, I think it's one of the most important things that I've learned recently. So you know, when you first start doing research, you don't really know what's going on, right? And you know, so you know, you're working, or you're working under someone, right? And you know, they're probably they're giving you tasks to some extent, right? And then, so for me, you know, so I did that for a while, right? You know, then I started to learn, kind of, what research was, right? And so I realized that, okay, well, one of the important things for me to do for research is that it's important for me, to try to ask my own questions, right? And so that's what I started doing. So I really focused on trying to ask those new questions, right? And that doesn't just work, because so I started trying to come up with new projects, new ideas, but invariably they would always fail. And the reason was so I was basically prioritizing coming up with something new rather than really finding what my passion was and having a reason for trying to dive down that path, right? And basically so I would have this idea, so I'd go, oh, it's like this is some new concept, and so I would start testing, start experimenting, but it would turn out that that for example the premise was wrong, and my test would fail and it wouldn't work, and I tried changing things, and then at the end you have this code that you changed 7 times, and that you threw like 10 random things at. And so I think a huge change that I recently made is now when I start to research, the first thing that I do it is read, right? I read, I learn, when you first look at a field, you can't just start off by by immediately doing research. You have to learn first and kind of figure out what that field is. Then I try to identify, what things, what interests me. Then I go from there.
So that's a great question, and it's a normal. I think most of us come across such kind of bottlenecks. So it just reminded me of one personal situation I just faced along similar lines. So the bottleneck, or the bottleneck that comes, I think, can come from 2 sides. One, the idea that we were trying to explore, see whether it is going to bring some value. Maybe there was some flaw in that, and we just prove that, well, it's not going to work, it's not going to give the benefit that we thought it would. The other possibility is we were looking in the wrong direction. So like in my case, my gut and the first principles said that I should see the value, but I was not seeing the value. And then I found that the designs on which I was trying to prove my point were not the suitable designs for that. So I had to change the design. And then I saw the value was there. So sometimes, going back to the basics, and not that, I should say, maybe free your mind a little bit and just try other options, and it might help you get out of that bottleneck.
So we're going to go ahead and move on to the outreach section. I think many of you are here because you want to get an undergrad research position. So just a quick show of hands, how many of you are currently working in a lab with a faculty member? And how many want to? Okay, with that, Vinny, I'll go ahead and have you wanted to start with a slide, and then we'll open this up to a couple questions for the panelists.
I feel like I'm in the way.
So,
Okay, good.
yeah, I think we're about to put a sign up right now, but the main thing is we have a ton of resources on our Discord. There's a document that basically points towards a ton of resources currently that we've compiled around campus, around grads. But yeah, basically, please feel free to scan that QR code in the back there.
Yeah, as Vinny said, please scan the QR code to get more resources, but I guess just to talk about my personal advice, I would begin with identifying what you're interested in, obviously, right? But for me, I started with just hey, I want to do something machine learning, right? And I just, looked at all machine learning faculty, which is fine, right? You don't want your bottleneck to be if you don't know anything, you don't know what you don't know, right? So if you haven't had an introduction to machine learning, it's hard to pick your niche, right? So in that case, it could be fine just to reaching out to a broad machine learning faculty. But if you do have the time, I recommend first pinpointing something. Second, as we have up there, look at the CS faculty page. For example, let's say you want to do something with robotics and AI. Well, we have a faculty page, maybe not on that specifically, but you could see on the faculty page what each professor is doing. Second, narrow it down to like a list of maybe 5 professors. And for each professor, we try to understand what their research premise is, right? Often they have that on their website. Read a few of their papers. For me, when I was doing that, I barely understood. But I was able to understand their research question. Like, why are they doing this? Why is what's currently done not working? And how are they different? What is their research trying to achieve, at least within these few papers? So once so you have your interest, you have a few professors, you know what each of them are doing, try to have some experience tied to that. Now, as our panel said, you don't necessarily need technical experience in that area, but again, it doesn't hurt. So don't let that be the bottleneck, but if you think you could maybe knock out a very introductory, maybe you're trying to be a natural language processing professor, maybe get something working like in a week, right? And then email that professor, hey, I read this paper, I maybe implemented to some extent, or I've done something related to that. Would you like to talk more about your research? So don't just like go up and ask, hey, hire me please. Frame it as more as a conversation.
I have a funny story about this. So when I first came as a first year, I was really interested in natural language processing research. And I know Professor Yang Jean is in the Department of Computer Science was, one of the people at the forefront of NLP research here. And I tried, sending him an email, and I was like, I'm a really passionate student. I'm really, interested in conducting research. But as many, people have told us in ML UVA, it's like professors are really busy, and sometimes emails don't go through, right? And so I just decided, what would be the harm if I just went to one of his office hours when no one was in there and just introduced myself and got a chance to learn from what his research currently was, and then tell him about my passion for research, and then tell him about why I'm so interested in NLP. And as it turned out, that's what led to my first opportunity in research, was just having a conversation, like Raffi said, with the professor. And most of you who are taking computer science classes, your professors are great resources into the amazing research that's happening here at UVA. Most of your professors are currently involved in research, and most of them know other professors who are doing the research that you're interested in, right? So there's no harm in having these conversations with your professors, and like Raffi said, exploring your intellectual pursuits in ML, and reaching out to professors and establishing that connection with them.
So I'll go back to Professor Campbell. What advice do you have for undergraduate students who want to get into research?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm certainly guilty of not responding to emails, so I get that. Okay, first thought is just put yourself in the shoes of the person you're asking. What would you find compelling? What would make you want to talk about this more? Is it an email that says, oh, I think your research is amazing, I also love whatever, natural language processing, can I do research? Okay. No, probably not, right? Now, this is maybe on the opposite end of the spectrum, but I was reading your paper, and on page 2, I think you made a mistake. Oh, that's okay. Tell me more, right? How? Okay, so you've invested time, and you've gotten to the technical level to understand that and engage with it. Oh, okay. That might be a conversation I'm interested in having. And so I think if you think, would I be if someone sent me this email, maybe it's someone in high school, would I be intrigued, or would I think, okay, I've got plenty of things to do? So that's one way to go about it. I think talking in person is always helpful. I will say something though. I think there is a lot of value to being specific to what you want. I want to do my CS research capstone with you, period, right? Very clear. I want to do research over the summer. Whatever it is, you know, maybe there's room to be flexible, that's fine. But I don't think there's any harm in just being clear, because now it's like I can understand what you're interested in. Sometimes it's honestly, it's like, it can be a little confusing. I've had conversations where I'm like, I'm not really sure what you're asking me. And so it's not bad to just sort of be clear, at least have a starting point on kind of what you're interested in doing. Like, is it you know, during the semester, for credit, et cetera. And yeah, don't feel bad about sending another email. I'm not condoning this, but I think it's also, I mean, it happens. You know, sometimes, like, you get one email, you're like, okay, I'm busy right now, but if this person's really interested, I mean, surely they could send a second email, right? And then it never comes, you're like, oh, okay, that person wasn't that interested. So, again, maybe not the best thing, but it happens. So don't feel bad about following up, or, yeah, I mean, in person. And then one more thing I'll mention, which it kind of goes back to my first point, which is just, if there's something interesting, specific that you're interested in, or it's a connection to something you're passionate about, something maybe that affected you growing up, or that it's a problem that you want to work on, or it's something you've done and you've prototyped, all of those things are like, okay, this person's more serious. Right? This person isn't just interested because they heard about it and they think, okay, I'll send an email. It's like, okay, this person cares, right? They want to do it. That also helps, I think, get a response.
One of the things that I'll mention is that if you ask 10 faculty member how they manage undergraduate researchers, you'll probably get 10 different answers. And in preparation for this, I spoke with Professor Major Bell, who's in CS, and you may know him. And his recommendation, at least for his group, is he encourages anyone who's interested to talk to his PhD students to really get a sense of what it is like in the lab, if there's an interest, to get all the questions answered, and then come to him with something specific, as Professor Campbell mentioned. So I'm going to turn it to our two graduate students. Does that happen? What do you think about that approach, and what are you seeing in your labs as it relates to undergrad? So I know that was a lot.
Yeah, I would love if I had like an undergrad researcher come to me, but we have had some come to our lab and approach our advisor directly, and our lab is very, it's grad school, so I feel like all lab cultures are very competitive and kind of high levels, or not high level, but very detailed in the lab meetings. And so we've had a few meetings where there's like 2 or 3 undergrad students, and then a week later there's 2, and then a week later there's 1, and then they just like fade out. And we haven't had anyone actually like do research with us within our lab group, but through like the Jefferson Scholars Program, there's been undergrads that have done like research with PhD students. And I don't know as an advisor, but I feel like reaching out to PhD students could be like a good introduction as well.
In our group, my advisor Ben, he totally supports undergraduate research, and actually our group has been lucky to have few exceptional undergraduate researchers who have helped us with our projects. So definitely, welcome to contact us. The other thing I was getting tempted to add, I mean, so far all the, in terms of accessing, researching about professors to try to join the groups is great. What if, nobody answers and, there's nothing, and you still want to do it, right? So what is stopping you? I think there is still, particularly if you're trying to do some kind of coding, then there are so many open forums for collaboration. There are lots of opportunities to collaborate with outside UVA. Just go online, develop your own project, and maybe one tricky thing might be, well, what is the right project to do? I think at undergraduate level, it is also important to build up the skills, right? So I think whatever project, whatever problem motivates you, right? You can just build that. So, yeah, I don't think anything can stop you from doing the work that you want to do. It will be great to, get involved with the research group if that happens, but otherwise you can still find open forums and just get going.
Or even like come into the Link Lab and you see someone, I probably wouldn't do this, but if you're really bold, you can go up and be like, hey, I'm an undergraduate here, I have no idea what you do, but like, can we talk? And maybe they do what you want to do, and maybe you make a new friend.
So I know this topic is really important, so I want to make sure we have time to answer your questions. So if you have anything to add, otherwise I'll open it up to the floor to see if you have questions.
So you mentioned reaching out to PhD students is a good first step, and you mentioned.
Oh, sorry, I missed the slides.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So you've also mentioned the resources providing professors, the websites where you can see the research interests. How do you go about finding PhD students in the research groups, and what's a good kind of first step to communicate with them?
Websites. I think most research groups have websites, and most professors are like linked to UVA engineering or like Link Lab or CS or different departments. And then you can like go on, most of them have their grad students in their projects, also LinkedIn, and then I know some grad students, like we have websites.
You'll pretty much find email IDs in most cases.
Yeah, to add on to that, some professors here don't have like a formal lab page. So what you could do is but they do have links to their papers, right? All professors here do. So you could check like second, third, fourth authors, and chances are they are the PhD students.
If it was super easy, everyone would do it, right? So you gotta work for it a little bit.
Okay, so let's say you reach out to the graduate students, you talk to them, the professor agreed to take you in. What do they exactly expect from you? Like, what level of performance do they expect from you? Like, you mentioned that you got very clear instructions on what you need to do, but now that you're a grad student, you don't have instructions. So now, what if you get a research opportunity and are they going to get instructions? Does it depend on the professor? What do they exactly expect from us? And from the professor's perspective, like, what do they get from us?
I'm just gonna say it'll depend on the professor.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. So this will definitely depend on who it is. But I think, yeah, so in general, you kind of, I guess, have a spectrum, right? So, you could, for example, be given very clear tasks, right? Or for example, you could, have basically, have more freedom, but also that means kind of have more responsibility as far as things like figuring out what those tasks are. And so, for example, for me, when I started doing research, the faculty member that I was under, so he had a task, or he had a direction that he wanted done, but he basically let me figure out how to do it. And so I think personally for me, that was perfect as an introduction for research, because that allowed me to, that gave me some direction, right? But also that allowed me to really be creative, to learn many things, to try many things, to kind of figure out and realize that, okay, this is a part of research, not always having all of these specifications, right? And to do experiments, and so that was something that was very valuable for me. Of course, people are different, right? I guess what some people prefer having, I guess, a more clear direction, right? And then some want to be a little more creative.
Oh, I'll answer this second part of your question. I'll try to go from like most altruistic to most selfish. So I think part of it is like, look, we're here at a university to help people learn, and it's just cool to see people learn new skills. And research is a different skill. Sometimes it's like because you need to graduate, and so you need to get a certain number of credits, and doing research is a way to do that. There's also, it looks good for UVA if people leave here and have good communication skills and can think independently and manage time. That's good. It's good to produce students like that. But then there's also like sometimes there's just projects that need to get done, and having more people to help is important. And we're always looking for new PhD students. And so, UVA students, like I've said, are already very talented. If you're good at research and interested, then maybe we can convince you to stay as a PhD student. So that's also really beneficial. It's kind of like an internship. LS is kind of like doing an internship.
Any other questions? All right, then we, okay.
Sorry, just in terms of finding resources, I'm not sure if this was covered. So for the grad students, there is the independent study where graduate students can basically do research for a semester under the professor. So if the undergrads have such option, then independent study could be a more formal way of approaching the professors. So that is one avenue. The other is, besides asking the PhD students, finding them from the research group website, you can also check with your TAs, most of whom could be grad students, right? PhD students, and they could also help you with ideas on what problems they are working on or problems that you can work on. So the other resource.
Okay. I'm sure there are a lot more questions out there, and you've got a great group to funnel those. I think maybe a future conversation is careers. It's a topic we didn't get to today, but doing undergraduate research, what does that look like for your resumes? What does that look like to get into grad school or to get into industry? So maybe a topic for another panel in the future. But I will turn it over to Vinny, Alex, and Raffi to wrap things up and for the night.
Yeah, so the good news is we got food provided, right? So we will in a little bit bring in food, and so we have pizza. But other than that, we really want to thank everyone here for taking the time out of your busy schedule to make it to this event. I hope that if each of you could at least get something out of this event, it's that research is something that we're all really passionate about, something that we're all really excited about. But I really like the fact that if we can start from first principles and we start from the beauty of the investigation itself, that there's really no limit to what UVA students here can accomplish with regards to research. Okay. With that being said, I really want to thank all of you for being able to make it, and a special thanks to our faculty and panelists for being able to answer those questions today. Thank you so much, Kelley, for facilitating our event. This really means a lot to us. And with that being said, we're going to leave that QR code up just a little bit longer for people who are interested in any other opportunities. And other than that, we really want you guys to take away something useful from today and check out our club. We meet every Sunday and also have lectures onwards as well. We love to connect students with opportunities both at UVA and outside UVA as well. With that being said, we'd like to close our panel today, and thanks for everyone.